are live. Welcome to the show, folks. This is Maximo, your host, as always, at the Maximo Show. Tuesday night takeover from VOD Pod Media. We hope you're doing well. Salute to you and to my homie, Rafael Collazo, a.k.a. Ray, calling in from Philly. First of all, let me say it is a pleasure to see you, my brother. How you doing?
My brother, I'm blessed. This has been a year where you really appreciate just being here and kicking it with family like you and my man Guyline in the background. So I'm just excited. Anytime Philly and San Antonio get together, it's a special combination, my man.
We gonna go there for Philly because, listen, first of all, we got to give you your flowers, as you like to say. Don't forget, I know you love to give people their flowers, so we got to give you your flowers too. Give the flowers to Guyland Jackson, who's making it happen. Everything behind the scenes here at VOD Pod Media every week. They just got done doing a all-women comedy show over the weekend. Okay. We got Kirsten Thompson, who just came back from a retreat, like a darkness retreat, just like Aaron Rodgers did. She's got incredible stories. Make sure you check her out at the More Than Magic Show here at VOD Pod Media. So if you're watching, please give us a like, comment, share, subscribe, chime in. Write your comments in. We're going to get to all your questions. And we got to give a shout out to Ray, because this brother has supported this show for a long time. We've been talking about getting him on. And a couple weeks ago, we got that MC Hammer chiming in a little bit. Guyland's working his magic back there in the back. I heard it in my headphones.
Don't spoil the surprises.
Don't spoil the surprises just yet.
Watch a full hour here, fam. We got all kinds of stuff.
We got 60 minutes to go. But we've been waiting to get you on since the Super Bowl. Listen, man, I was cheering for Philly. I wanted Philly to win. Jalen Hurts, man, we wanted him to show out. Did the better team win? I don't know. I think the Philly and Jalen Hurts will get a second chance. Give me your quick thoughts on the Super Bowl, man.
Well, I think, first of all, it's a blessing to be here, and I appreciate especially in the heart of Texas, giving Philly love is not easy sometimes. But I think how I think about it is Mahomes got Reed his first one. And if you remember that game, Mahomes really pulled a rabbit out of his hat. And, Garoppolo missed the game-winning touchdown by about this much, and he just had a few miracle plays at the end to pull him out. I think on the flip side, I think this is the one Reed and that veteran coaching staff won for Mahomes. Not that Mahomes didn't play well, but it really was, experience matters. Being seasoned veterans matters. You're talking about decades and decades of experience between Reed and the defensive coordinator, Bieniemy, who now is getting an opportunity to call some plays in Washington, and the rest of that staff. And, we have a good young up-and-coming coaching staff, but they're young boys. They're rookies. Jay Moran ain't winning the championship for a minute, as great as he is. And I think that experience was the difference. By the way, interesting note today, Eagles football, that we lost both our offensive, defensive coordinators to head coaching jobs. The Eagles not only announced their coaches, but two coaches of color. So we're going to have Brian Johnson, who's going to be promoted from within, African-American, going to be the OC, and Sean Desai, Indian-American brother, who was on Pete Carroll's staff, is going to be our defensive coordinator. Okay. So a good day for diversity and inclusion in Philadelphia sports. But nevertheless, you got to feel good about Hurts. The one mistake was so fluky, that fluky fumble. That happened to Mahomes in the AFC conference game, just slipped out of his hands. And, obviously, a bad punt here and a poor defensive play there. And you lose by 3 points to a great team and a superstar quarterback. So,
you just mentioned it because, listen, I've never really spent a lot of time in Philly. I think I went through there one time on an airport layover. I ain't never spent extended time in Philly. But one thing about the city that I love is like the rich sports history. You think about all the great boxers. You think about the basketball teams, the football teams, and the love for sports. And, it's not like you really got to be a sports head, but if you live in a city like Boston, another sports town, San Antonio loves this sports as well. I had to mention it right off the bat.
Well, Maximo, but there's a few levels to this that you would appreciate. No, I'm serious. So everything you said is right on point. The passion, and I always tell people that it's such a blessing to be a Philly sports fan, but then the overlap with my Puerto Rican Latino sports fandom and boxing and all that. But you got to understand something. I am so fortunate as a Latino of my generation, one of the very few that can honestly say. So first of all, I'm in my late 40s. So late 70s, early 80s, Philly sports was in a similar era. We had legends on every team.
Yeah, yeah.
So my dad would be driving down the street, and this happened a few times, and we look to our left, and Dr. J's in his Rolls Royce at the light.
Are you serious?
I grew up walking distance from Joe Frazier's gym. And he had a pink Cadillac in front. And, once in a while, my dad would just walk in and he'd talk to us, and he knew some of the Latino guys that boxed there and stuff. So and then now fast forwarding, now that also was the era. So you're an artistic cat too. You got also, that's their Philly International Sound, Gamble and Huff, Patti LaBelle, who God bless still with us, all those Teddy Pendergrass, all those incredible artists, and many of which I met when I was a wee little lad. Fast forward to this time period, not just the sports, there's a synergy, right? So Eagles, Sixers, Phillies are all, Embiid's going to Eagle games, Bryce Harper's tweeting at Hurts, but then you integrate the artistic piece in the unity. So who's at these games? You got Kevin Hart in the stands. He sit with Meek Mill. He sit with Jazzy Jeff. They're hanging out with Mike Trout, who's a local guy. Yeah. The Hollywood set, Pink, so there's such a beautiful unification, and the connection between the sports with the arts and the people that got that Philadelphia Steeds. Is when Philly's got a lot of issues, but when Philly's right, it's really special.
We're getting a little ahead of ourselves, because for our folks that don't know you just yet, Ray, let's give us an intro in your words. Listen, we're not going to get into the full impressive bio we know, but give us a little bit of an intro in your words to our viewers, everyone that's watching along from your page right now. Any shout outs, any hellos, and give us a quick intro of who Ray is, of the many different hats that you wear, my brother.
Well, look, I mean, Philly's a big part of that story. So, growing up, born and raised in Philadelphia, when at the time the Latino population was fairly small in comparison to the bigger city, and overwhelmingly homogenous, like very extremely Puerto Rican. If there was 20,000 Latinos, there was 19,500 Puerto Ricans. There was a couple of old school Cuban bodegueros and a couple other people. So and I say that in the context that while my parents instilled very much a very proud Puerto Rican Latino heritage in our family, particularly my mother that grew up in the Campo in Puerto Rico, it really was the fusion of these two cultures, the more traditional Puerto Rican Latin American culture that my mom brought to the table, and the Nuyorican soul brother that is my father, who was on Black radio, and you should have him on your show one day, which is a whole other conversation. And so that fusion it goes back to the sports, that fusion of politics, activism. My dad was in the Young Lords, which people would know was kind of the Puerto Rican equivalent of the Chicano power movement of the Southwest, Brown Berets, Black Panthers. My dad hung out with Huey Newton, and had some incredible stories of that era, and how the Black community in Philadelphia raised us, and kind of that and shaped us in a lot of ways, good and bad. So that was a very volatile racial climate in those times, very segregated city. The Italians didn't even the white people hated each other. The Italians lived in one area, the Irish in the other. And, that shaped me. And thinking about, the responsibility I felt being blessed to get an education and, kind of being better off than kind of your typical Hispanic family in those years. My parents were some of the first city workers, for example. So we had healthcare. We were middle class. We were homeowners, so relatively really privileged. And just always being driven by my love for Philly, my love for being Latino, but making sure that my community was respected. And that's what's led my career. So, I've been in national politics for a long time. I'm currently the political director for Unidos US, which is formerly National Council La Raza. And so you can imagine what the political director for Unidos US does, so work with Latino leaders like yourself, brother. And that's how we connected around the country, mobilizing on a federal level, some state stuff. And, but I've always had this passion for communications and media. So, so for the last 10 years or so, I've podcasted and tried to develop my voice using these channels, and have really tried to, of course, incorporate my political knowledge and expertise and information to share with people, but really tried to bring people the whole picture, because you can't, to me, I would be withholding part of myself if I didn't share my interests in the case that you and I do, our friends and our colleagues in the arts, and in social justice and in sports and in lifestyle and
Yeah, it's all
culture. You
interwoven.
know what I'm
It's all
saying? Yeah.
interwoven together.
So
You know what I mean? And
that's so that's also been a great passion, and I that's why I admire so much. That's why we connected on a lot of levels, brother, because you and I share a lot of overlapping interests.
yeah, absolutely, man. And it's all love. You know, one of the other things we do is show. Listen, the reason we do this, and I want to talk a little bit about your show as well, Found in Translation, the reason we do this. Now, I was in a conversation with someone over social media not too long ago, and somebody thought what I was speaking on was trivial. They said, why are we talking about this? And I said, well, I don't know, maybe to shape the culture, maybe to shape the narrative, maybe for someone like yourself, Ray, because I've seen you in a lot of different circles up and down the highway. I've seen you down in Texas. You've been in the West Coast. You've been organizing out there for years. Your opinion matters. And the work you put in, you talk about, you know, your father. I want to ask you a question right now because, listen, myself, yourself, we had the privilege of having our fathers. I know many of other people didn't have that, but I have to ask you because I've heard some other conversations that I've been on some calls recently, and people have talked about the responsibility of living up to, you know, what you've been born into, right? Your father was out here doing this. He was a young Lord. My dad was out there a leader in the community, you know, and now, we are college educated. Our parents, my dad didn't go to college. I don't know about your dad. He didn't go to college, but we're part of that generation.
College radio station and network. That's what it is.
So we're part of that generation that got college educated. We did what they told us to do. Now we're out here trying to make moves. We're out here doing to make a dent in society. You know, I got to ask you, man, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, you have 2 kids right now as well. I have 2 children. And so we're part of we're in the midst of 2 other generations, you know, so where we're at in society, there is, a lot going on, right? Are we making this world better or worse than what it was before, right? Because, you and I connected as well online and through social media, through in the Trump era. So we could talk about the Trump era as well. But, give me your thoughts on I guess, immediately on, standing on the shoulders of your father. Guyland's father's also been involved in his life. His father was the head of diversity and inclusion for Outback Steakhouse years ago and that whole restaurant industry. But it's tough work, right? Man, this is difficult work.
No, it's difficult because these relationships are complicated. So, and he's probably watching now, to be honest with you. My dad has always cast a complicated shadow in my life because on one level, I mean, there is so much on some level you could argue that my career trajectory is kind of like finishing off what he started in a lot of ways, whether it was activism or media, and even my sports interests and all kind of stuff. And then on another level, it's complicated because, my parents got divorced at 14 and, that gets complicated. And when you feel like you were, things were disrupted at those critical ages and my brothers were a little younger, so it was even a little harder for them. On some level, it's regardless of how well intentioned the men are to try to get things back together, it's hard to ever make it the same. And Charlemagne, I see, he's doing some social media on this topic. And so that's always kind of been a struggle for me on a real personal level. Like, why I want to create my own path and I want to kind of I want to make sure I don't replicate some of the mistakes. I can't deny the path he blazed. And, a lot of the kudos you're giving me and around my interests and a lot of that comes from him. So, I got to give him that love for that. And, he's still a very big part of our lives. And so that being said, it's so interesting you bring up this topic today because the reason I'm not wearing a tie is not for fashion. It's because I had a tie earlier. And the reason I had a tie earlier was that I was part of an event at Roberto Clemente Middle School in North Philadelphia, literally walking distance where I grew up, this middle school. And the event to end Black History Month was to bring 100 Black and Latino men together to a school that's all Black and Latino, and to sit down with 100 Black and Latino young boys, 8th graders, 7th graders, and have this conversation with them about the responsibility of being a man and what that means in 2023. And it was clear that most of these young men did not have a father figure in their lives because including the young man I was assigned to, and that's a story I want to share with you, didn't know how to tie ties. And that speaks to, and how interested and happy they were to not only learn from a man how to tie a tie, but to receive this tie as a gift. And I told this young man that the tie I'm giving you, I wore, and I showed him the picture. The tie I'm giving you a month ago, I was in Los Angeles, California for work, and I took a picture with this tie on, this suit on, in the tallest building in Los Angeles. I forget the name of it, but the tallest building, overlooking that incredible vista, that skyline in LA. And I said, it is your responsibility to take this tie much higher than I did. And so just that moment, which on some level I thought was going to be really cheesy and awkward, you could tell it was really impactful for this kid. I then find out, talking to him in Spanish, by the way, is that he's been in the country from Honduras less than 2 years. He is still trying to get his bearings. So when I asked him where he started, he said, well, we moved to the Bronx first. I said, what part of the Bronx? I don't know. I said, all right, how long? You've been in Philly? I've been here 6 months. Okay, where do you live? He knew the street. He couldn't tell me the neighborhood that street represented, and I know what it was. But my point is, this young man, and it was pretty clear that he's with a single mother, can imagine the journey, brother. With this, who knows what this young man went through with a single mom to get to the East Coast of this country, and still trying to get his bearings. But an optimistic kid, a happy kid, and someone that was really appreciative of this moment. This 45 minutes we had to just talk, and for me to provide my little piece of encouragement and mentorship. So that filling those gaps, brother, is real, and we have to do everything we can to spread, as imperfect as it is, brother, because you and I don't got all the answers.
Yeah.
To spread our mentorship, because there's a lot of young men out there that need it.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, man, I'm glad you told that story, man. And the reason I wanted to get into it is because, quickly, something you said, listen, a lot of us didn't grow up with our dads, but some of us did. Many of us did. So I think that fatherhood and parenthood is a complicated subject. It's one that some people don't want to talk about, and some people are rushing to tell the story, and so you're right. Many of our parents, many of us have made mistakes, right? Many of us are testaments to, changing the narrative, and so that's important, man. And I'm glad you did some of that mentoring work today, man. Talk to me a little bit about your role. I mean, not your role really per se, but I guess the Found in Translation. You founded the Bomba Live as well. You mentioned media. You had a green screen, but Guilan made it black. And so you got a good setup as always over there, man. Talk to us a little bit about, why you've created that space.
Well, it's going to be 10 years on Easter Sunday in a few weeks. And Easter Sunday, 2013, I said I have to start, because I just felt such a need to get it out. And I really felt, and I still do, that because of this distinct, maybe not unique, but distinct set of experiences that I have. And really, I started it. Yeah, I wanted to say, I think I have something to say. But my superpower in media and in my life is my network of friends and colleagues like you, Max. And I put you right on the top of that list, brother, because how much I admire you and how highly I think of you. And the consistent story, and my journey's gone through a lot of iterations. It's changed names. I'm not the best at branding things. I start another thing. I need a logo for this. The Bomba Live is going to continue in a different way than it started. But the bottom line is that, and however clunky it's come off technically, and I've changed kind of formats a lot of ways and tinkered, but the biggest compliment that I get, and the thing that the feedback people give me the most, and I'm begging them for like critical feedback, right? Is they're like, where do you know all these people? Because, and this is Latino professionals.
That's that social capital.
No, but Max, but it's very instructive, because these are Latino professionals that are kind of similar to Max's and Ray, but they're like, they don't have a space. Yeah, they might have a space to see a reggaeton video, or they may have a space to see a starlet, or they may have a space to see, Latinos in a positive light. Yeah, and of course, there's Sotomayor and there's others out there. But there's very few spaces, even to this day. And I know there's new media, and God bless, there's other projects that we support and that are out there. But there's still relatively very few spaces and prominent ones where you could really just have kind of substantive, entertaining conversation with Latinos that are not just like have something to say, but are like really engaged and authentic from the community. Because you and I can go to the carniceria, we can go to the neighborhood, and like we're still connected. And I think that's what our network, our collective network, brings to the table. And when I elevate the Maximos and the Guidelines, and by the way, our connection, our distinct connection, I think, with our connection and our genuine love and care and admiration for the Black community, I think is also a big part of it. Because not every Latino who's down really has that connection the way people like you and I next to. So, and people feel that and see that, and we love everybody. So I think that it's really introducing the world to this network, because what I tell people is, unless you've been in my back pocket the last 20 years, how would you know? How would you know
Yeah.
how would you know the people in Phoenix or San Antonio or Miami or the guy that worked with me in Nevada? And we might talk about this later. When I got real sick last year, my wife didn't realize she ended up having to be my publicist. And what freaked her out wasn't my friends that called. It was the people she didn't know that were calling, because they were like, well, she said, this guy Maximo called me. And, and so it has really been giving me a platform to share all these amazing people that I've been so blessed to connect with over the years. And San Antonio has been on the top of that list. Y'all give me so much love, from Andy Hernandez, one of my political mentors, my dear homie, Angel, who I went to Columbia with, Rob, Jorge, and those guys, and you, brother, and many other friends and associates.
Yeah, so if you don't know Ray, you got to look him up. Find him on Instagram, find him on social media, wherever you find him, wherever you can find his shows, his platforms, connect with him. Just an all-around good brother, an advocate, a father, someone who's really been entrenched in the community, doing good, solid work out there in Philly and all over. Like I said, he came out to San Antonio a couple years ago, mixing it up with the Texas Organizing Project and many others.
Michelle Trevino, much respect. That's our homegirl right there.
Michelle should be around. She should be watching. We'll give her a quick shout out.
Better.
And everybody else wearing those teal shirts, boots on the ground. They've got an army of just people out there doing great work.
Yeah, that's family.
And that's one example of. Yeah, that's one example of one of the communities, one of the organizations doing, really solid work to advance the state of the state, man. And so give me some thoughts really quickly, man, the state of the Latino community. I don't know if you want to how deep you want to get here, man, but there's a lot of headlines out there. Give me a few ideas, a few thoughts on Latino community, some of the bigger things that we should be thinking about right now.
Well, let's start from the very top beginning, because that's where everybody's going to want to start. We'll talk about Texas in a second. I think I'm like a very Puerto Rican, because we're big into duality. It comes from our colonial status. We're American, we're Latino, we're Puerto Rican, we're Caribbean. We don't know what we are. That on one level, politically, I have half of my mind to say, y'all need to leave Joe Biden alone, and we need to just get behind him and get it done for 24 and stop messing around with this idea. Yeah, he's old. Okay. Because the reality is Obama's not coming back. That's what y'all are trying to say, but you don't want to admit it. You just want like an Obama and a charismatic figure. If you want charisma and excitement, go to a pastor, watch Maximo's show. You just gotta have to find it somewhere else, because right now our democracy and kind of the direction of our country is just on a razor's edge. I wish it wasn't this way. I wish the Republican Party had legitimate people running it that were professional and had the best interest generally of our country. It just doesn't. So, and Biden, I think, outside of another part I'm going to talk about in a second, I think has done a credible job, and we can get into that if you like. I think the other part of it, on the other part, which the other side of the coin, which is not the good side, which is probably, unfortunately for us, I could argue one of his weakest points is the Latino piece. And so, this immigration stuff, and there's now another asylum rule, which is really crappy and feels very Trumpish, and we're going to fight that. And that's in the immigration piece. It's not one of his skill sets. He didn't have a lot of experience in it, unlike something like Ukraine, where that's kind of like more his wheelhouse. And I think generally he's done a good job with that. And just in general, just there hasn't been, if you think about it, and again, it's not about comparing or being critical, but just in representation. Not that that's the most important criteria, because it's not. But if you think about it, in the African American community, having a black woman vice president, a black man, a young black man, who's the head of the Congressional House Democrats, a young black man running the Democratic Party nationally, Jamie Harrison, and a youngish black woman. God bless her, and I love all these people. So it's not a Supreme Court. On the representation side, you could say, well, black people can point to at least those things. Latinos don't even have much of that, frankly. Yeah. God bless Miguel Cardona and Becerra in the cabinet. I'm not saying there's no representation, but if you just kind of look at, where he's invested his political capital, it's not been for Latinos. And we can, for the most part, again, some of my good friends would argue some of these points, but so, I think in general, I'd give him a B plus, maybe A minus. As the inflation goes down, I think for Latinos, it's been closer to CC minus. But that's the cards we're dealt right now.
Yeah.
So if we keep messing around, we're going to end up having a totalitarian state. So, and then that goes to Texas, which is really, and now we're starting to see that more in Florida, where is a prelude to what could happen if the sort of the totalitarian wing of the Republican Party takes over again.
Yeah,
I could argue
Texas and Florida are anomalies, in this whole thing, right? Because you know what it's like. You've been on the ground in here. You know what it's like.
Well, I mean, that's the sad state of it, is because we really are living. And I don't say this to be hyperbolic, fam. I don't say this to be provocative.
No, but it's real. It's real.
No, I mean, we have been living in y'all been living in Texas in a apartheid state for decades, because you have a majority minority population. Historical. It's not like y'all just got there. The border crossed y'all, right? And then, historical, vibrant, robust black community as well, and other communities. And you have a government that for literally decades has been hostile, not just in a rhetoric, which has happened more post-Bush in this Abbott era, but in these policies. I don't got to talk about, the guy almost froze y'all to death. The anti-immigration stuff. And let's talk about, I'll just give you all one example that maybe is kind of like under the radar and wonky. When the Obamacare passed in, 10, 11, 9, rather. When Obamacare passed, Florida and Texas were the two biggest red states that did not take the Obamacare money. So what happened was, there was, and many of y'all listeners are probably familiar with this, Michelle organizes around this issue, is that there is what we call a Medicaid gap of people in Texas that should be covered by Medicaid, but are not because they're not eligible by federal standards, but because Texas has refused to take the money from the federal government to fill the gap. It's about 500,000 people, and they're almost the vast majority Latino and Black. And so literally, this governor who's been there forever how many people do you think have died from that cohort of people over the last 10, 12, 15 years from comorbidities, from obesity, from COVID, from it, not being able to afford their insulin because they were in this gap in Texas. So this has been, from a policy perspective and now increasingly a rhetorical perspective, a very hostile. And the talk about the voting rights and criminal justice issues has been in redistricting, diluting Latino Black power in our federal apportionment process. So it's really sad. And we could talk about how we eradicate, it's going to be a long road to overcome that electorally, but what's happening in Texas now, and was now increasingly happening in Florida, is going to be the blueprint for these people if and when they ever take control again for the whole country.
Yeah, it's complex. It's deep, and it's funny because you mentioned you almost froze us to death. If you weren't as savvy as Ray, folks, and didn't catch this, we had a power outage from the grid, the Texas grid here in San Antonio, completely shut down when our freeze happened about 2 years ago. The reason I mentioned that is because a good friend of mine, a good friend of the show, Janie Gonzalez, has been elected and appointed the first Latina CPS Energy board president yesterday. I think she was her first official day in office. She had a big celebration. I wasn't able to make it, but I wanted to give her a shout out because she's also got a unique opportunity to go out there and make some changes and do some things with regards to that power grid. And so if you don't know her, Ray, I'm going to get you connected with her. She'll be someone for you to know down here in the area.
Absolutely.
She affectionately goes as the Latina CEO. And so
Okay.
those folks here in San Antonio know who she is. Janie, hats off to you. Congratulations. And let's get to work. We're here for you. Because as you know, Ray, we got to utilize our network, as you alluded to already, right?
Absolutely.
You know, yourself, myself, a lot of other people that we know in the community have, you know, got started in similar ways and continue to do more and more and more work. And so it's about the community. You know, long and short, it's about the community. It's about bettering conditions for our people, our children, our elders, so on and so forth. Go ahead, man.
No, and I wanted to mention to that point, and going back to this father conversation, when the event was over at the school today and the kids went back to class, especially a lot of the men, but especially the Latino men, stuck around to network with each other because most of them didn't know each other.
Yeah, it's good.
And we had business executives, people like me in politics, health field, and what was so interesting about it is that they all not only are very successful in a different field and obviously want to get back to doing something like this, but they all grew up in that hood, and very few of us knew each other. And they were like, "Yo, we need to keep this going." So we're talking about doing a luncheon, and and so it's so interesting because from a Latino male perspective, to that point we were talking about earlier, is that we continue to need the support because even if we move up the ladder, quote unquote, there's fewer of us in those spaces. And especially if you grew up the way we grew up, we want to keep that connection with our community and a brotherhood of people that are going to push us as well. So, that networking piece you're talking about is critical.
Yeah, it's paramount too. And now in a couple of weeks, I got to give you the inside knowledge, man. In a couple of weeks, we're having a men's mental health show, and we've got a couple people that have already agreed to come on. We're going to have a roundtable discussion right here at VodPod. So we're going to have a 2-week discussion because it's such a topic that requires us to get, week after week and continue to put this at the forefront. Here at the table, man, we're always big advocates of health. And, one of the things that's important to you, to I, is our health, right? We cannot do this work that we want to do of giving back to the community, uplifting other people, if we don't have ourselves. I was lucky enough to attend a national conference this weekend in San Antonio, a little bit of last week into the weekend, where I was wondering about people's mental health. I was wondering about people's health because we continuously give into such dark spaces, right? When you're talking about human trafficking, you're talking about uplifting, people that have trauma, fighting up against institutional racism for generations, right? So much that the system can do nothing and prevail, right? The system doesn't have to do anything. We may work for 40 years and get a policy change in a workspace, right? And that's not to put the dark, light on the work, but this work is hard. And many of the people that we work with are damaged folks. And I don't mean that as a slight.
Let me
jump in, Ray.
This
Go
is
ahead.
just one example of what you just said. And again, this ain't to put somebody down that's just trying to make an honest living, ain't doing nothing, that's an ethical person doing this in law enforcement. But if Latinos refused border workers to treat our people badly, they wouldn't be able to do it. So, again, there's nothing wrong with doing an honest living, and there is a need for some of those skills and resources on the border, but I'm just saying, we do it to ourselves a lot of times.
Absolutely. But the point I'm trying to make is that, yourself, myself, anybody that's interested in doing community work, we have to stay grounded, right? And we have to think about ways to better our health and to better ourselves, to continue to level up, right? I mean, I think of men's responsibility of eradicating sexism and misogyny when the system is set up for you to do nothing. You don't have to do nothing, right? We don't have to do anything, and the system will prevail in a way of patriarchy and just ruthlessness against our women, which many of us don't want, but it requires us to step outside the box. I guess I'm wondering, Ray, because I know how you feel about health. We mentioned before the show came on that you had some health issues last year. I wonder about how many people lose themselves in this work, man, because it's easy to do. Spending 10, 12 hours a day on the job, any job that's involved in the community to uplift people, to give back and to fight up against, oppressive forces. It's very easy to lose ourselves in this work.
It's so interesting you say, I'm glad we're having this conversation. is that, and after this, we're gonna make it lighter and talk hip hop and fun stuff. So I promise y'all. But yeah, the long and short of it is that about 10 months ago, in late April of last year, I contracted Guillain-Barré syndrome. It's very rare. Our homie Ernesto Mejia, who was watching, much love to that brother. It was a tremendous resource during my healing process. He contracted it many years ago, so I knew what it was. But the long and short of it is that it's one of these. The good thing is it's largely curable, but it's going to take a year of your life to heal your nerves because it fries your nerves. And I couldn't walk for 3 days. I was in, walkers and canes for months. And just generally weak. And, you can imagine when nothing works for a while, it's pretty crazy. So the long and short of it is that, it forced me to take a step back. And, what I tell people is that walking around in a walker or cane was nothing compared to the psychological impact, because the feeling of not being able to do what you want kind of as a man is frustrating. Not looking physically weak in front of your sons sucks. And I know you've gone through that with your, but you're a muscle guy. You got broken limbs and stuff. It's a little different thing. But seriously, and I think the mental health part was more challenging than the physical, even though the physical was not insignificant. For all the reasons you're talking about, you feel isolated, you feel weak, you feel you question whether you're going to be 100% again. So so it's heavy. And I was lucky in that, and too many to count, but I do want to give a special shout out to Ernesto because, he was really my coach through this specific, health challenge, and not just for me, my wife, my family, because, it's a very rare thing. So most people don't know how it affects you. But you were part of that, and so many others. I think it's going to end up saving my life because, unlike you, Max, I've never been a real fit person and exercise, and that part of my life has not come easy to me. I've always been a workaholic and organizing and being in front of a computer or a mic, talking and working. And, at some point when my rehab process, my physical therapy process wasn't going so hot toward the end of the summer, the therapists were basically like, you got to make a decision. You can kind of do the minimum, and this is going to take a long time, and maybe you're never 100% again, or you got to step it up. And in my humble way, I feel like I have. So I probably, in the last 4 months, I've averaged going to the gym 4 times a week, which, and I've done many weeks 5, some 3. And I'm not CrossFitting or doing anything like you do on your level, but, I put in an honest hour, an hour and a half those days, and it's changed my life. It's changed my life.
There you go.
And so on some weird way, I feel better than ever. And I think in the front end, when I was rehabbing my body, the mental health part was the worst. Now that this switch has gone off in me, now my psychologically, it's been such a burden because on some level, I always felt destined to be sloppy. And this was never going to be like a strong suit of my life and a weakness. And it'll probably shave a few years of my life because I have a gut and And so now that I feel like, okay, I'm taking control of it. And because frankly, I was starting on such a low floor that I have so much to improve on. And so I have so much to look forward to in that journey now. And so it's such a mental health switch, but I still have my challenges, brother. And I think, again, besides on a personal level, people reaching out to me, I've shared a fair amount on social media because I want people to know, it helps me, but also, on social media, it looks like I got it all a lot together, in terms of, beautiful family, stable career. Looks like I'm having a good time in life generally. And, but I want people to know, even, people that look like they may have it together, go through their things too. And we should be there for each other.
Absolutely, brother. And I'm glad you shared that. Before we turned on the cameras, I didn't know if you wanted to share any of that, but listen, what you're saying is all true, and respect and love to you, man, because we're all a work in progress. We're all a masterpiece being written. Like you mentioned, you said it earlier, we don't have all the answers, and everyone has to write their own story. And so for you, if you could take a few days of the week, a few hours of the week to get a little bit better, I always tell people, if you can get 0.00001.1% better, if you could get just a fraction better, that's how progress happens. The pyramids of Chichen Itza weren't built in a day, and none of the masterpieces that we think were built in one day either.
That's right. And, the other thing I wanted to share on that is that one of the mental health challenges that I've had through this process is survivor's guilt, because over the last year and a half, and I know this is similar to a lot of cities in the country, Philadelphia's had this really sad spike in gun crime, and I'm not gonna talk about them. I'm not gonna name them here for their family's privacy, but I mean, families that we love and respect so much lost two college age boys, young men, just total innocent victims standing in the wrong place at the wrong time through gun violence, and seeing what those families went through right around the time I was going through my thing. And then in the course within that 3-4 month period where I got ill and was starting to recover, four different guys who all had birthday, who all were within a month age of me, that I knew on different levels. One was a coworker, one was a couple people I know on social media, and one was another one of these kind of extended network friends. Passed away suddenly, and they were all my age.
Mm.
And again, there's but I really, and I still feel a little guilty about it, to be honest. Not that I'm blessed to be here, and I count it be a blessing, but I definitely went through a lot of thoughts around, why did we lose G, and why did we lose E, and why did we lose, Julito, and you know, we all had birthdays within a month of it. Like it's heavy. So a lot of things when you're in that process of healing, you have a lot goes through your mind, and you can't just shut down. You gotta share and get help from people.
Absolutely. And so I invite you and everyone else to stay tuned to VOD Pod MIDI here at the show. We have a 2-week special mental health edition show coming up for men, because there's things that we don't talk. Look, health means a lot of different things, but overall, I think it's, us looking at each other, looking at ourselves with respect, and what we put into our bodies, how we treat others, how we spend our time. That's to me what a healthy, society looks like. And, many of us didn't grow up in maybe healthy households or healthy communities. And so if we can, help turn that around through our actions, through our behaviors, through our, our leadership, then that's what we want to do. So I appreciate you sharing that, man, because everyone's dealing with their own things. Everyone's dealing with their own battles. So know that if Ray can do it, if I can do it, hey, let us be a sign, and let us connect you with other people that can maybe help you level up as well.
And let me say this to your listeners and people watching, Max, is that, and I know Max feels the same way. If anyone needs to talk or needs help with anything, my DMs are open. Max's DMs are open, especially the guys I hear, people that don't feel like they have someone to talk to. We have to be there for each other. We just, it's so easy to just let people know when something's going on. I'm here for you, whatever you need. We got to be proactive about checking in with them and sharing so they don't feel alone. And so needless to say, anyone watching this, we're here for anyone that needs the help.
Yeah. And I know we said we're going to get into a lighter subject, but that just reminds me, my partner was driving home from work the other day. She came home a little late because the police had the highway shut down. There was a guy getting ready to jump off the bridge on the south side of San Antonio just the other day. And so I don't know exactly what happened, but we got a lot of work to do, man. And so I my hat's off to you. My hat's off to anybody that's dedicated their lives to bettering others and helping society get healthy. So I'll leave it at that before we get to the next subject, which is the Bad Bunny effect. I know you've been dying to talk about this, man. So give me your thoughts. I don't know if we're going to get to those pretty pictures that you shared with us, but tell me what the Bad Bunny effect is, man, because we know you got the scoop.
Well, I think that there's I've been meaning to put a blog post together, and I will at some point. But I'm debuting some of these thoughts on the Maximo show, because where else would you do it? But I think there's a couple things, and that are important for all of us to think about. One is, now, there's lots of reasons why this historic, almost Beyonce, Michael Jackson level of superstardom, which I think most Latinos are kind of surprised by how big the guy's gotten, frankly, has happened. And he built on the shoulders of a lot of generations of Latinos in his music movement. But I think the first thing is we have to really, really own the lesson that he's shared with all of us about authenticity. And the fact that, and I've heard people like Jennifer Lopez and other prominent Latinos talk about this, is that my man don't even pretend to speak any English. Like he's going to be him. And he's going to be him. And he even takes it to the next level where he says, I'm going to be unapologetically Puerto Rican. You know, like I'm not even gonna like try to, of course I love all my Latino fans and I want everyone to enjoy the music and it's all love. And obviously a big part of his last album was dedicated really a homage to the culture and music of Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic. But like I'm gonna be me and I'm not gonna say it's gonna be straight chaser. If you like it, you don't like it. And so many of us are scared to be that way, honestly. And we feel like we have to kind of, kind of make it generic or no, just be ourselves. So that's inspired me. And I think the next iteration of my podcasting career, I'm going to try to reflect that. I think the other thing I wanted to share is that, you know, we shouldn't be afraid, similar to that point, we shouldn't be afraid to be who we are. And if we're versatile, then be versatile. And that's one of his strengths. And people ask me all the time, well, I don't really, what's this Bad Bunny thing about? Like, what's the one word you describe? Like, well, I would say versatile or range because, he paints his fingernails and he wrestles.
Yeah,
He
I saw
raps
him. He's
with
on WWE.
yeah, he raps with the hardest Latin trap cats like Angel, like the hardest guys. And he's jumping on the gasoline station thing. But then he does, indie rock songs with Bombasterio, and on and on and on. And the reason it works for him isn't because it's a marketing trick. He actually feels comfortable and appears very comfortable to his fan base and to the world in his own skin in all these spaces. Now he's blessed with that ability, but the fact is that, I think so many of us are told in this social media world, you got to pick a niche. You got to do this one thing and
Yeah,
just do this
yeah,
one thing. And Maximo, our personalities are beyond that. We can talk politics,
absolutely.
activism, sports, and why not share all who we are? Like it would be there's the good Catholic boy in me. It would be sinful not to share it. Like, why not? And I'm amazed how many people bring up the sports stuff to me because I do it, but I don't feel like I'm a sports guy per se. But the fact that I share it, I'm enthusiastic and I bring a different perspective on it, and I include other people in it who are experts. They appreciate it. So I just think those are a couple tidbits I wanted to share because the more we're just unapologetically who we are, you'd be surprised how many people are feeling it.
Absolutely. And that's case in point. A lot of people ask me, well, hey, I heard you have a podcast. I heard you have a talk show. I was like, yeah, I do. Well, what's it about? Well, we don't really have a subject per se. We
Tough,
bring
right?
on interesting people. We bring on people. We talk about the culture. We have these power talks where we leave you inspired, where we leave you feeling, motivated to go out there and tackle the world as it should be.
That's it. That's all
Yeah, you
got
to go out there and tackle Wednesday after hearing this Tuesday night. So if you're hearing this, I hope you're doing well. We got some shout outs to give because we got the viewers, as always, chiming in. Mr. Mickey Sweet, he says, happy Tuesday on the comments because him and Cheryl Meadow, I'm telling you, they're tuning in every week to VodPod Media. We got to have them on the show. If you're in San Antonio, you know them for their hip hop contributions. They're all over. Check them out on San Antonio College Radio. Destiny Hernandez, my partner, my lady, she says, why are you talking about them Eagles, man? She says she's a Cowboys fan. Why are you talking about them Eagles already at the top of the show?
I could talk about Dak. I could talk about Dak Prescott all day if you want.
Dak's all right. We're going to give Dak his flowers when he wins the NFC Championship. Christina Vega says, looking smooth, my brother, to Ray. I hope you're doing good. She says you looking good. Finally, we got another comment that says, thank you so much for acknowledging the patriarchy and sexist practices. Most people are so conditioned in this world that they're not even aware of the structures and the forces. And that's the same for racism. That's the same for homophobia, right? I mean, we got to step outside the box, folks. There's a lot of people that feel like, well, that's not really my thing. Well, you better make it your thing because we're looking at a more diverse world every day. And that's how the world is turning. We've got people I know that went up to Austin today to fight for some gun legislation from San Antonio. And so lots of things are happening, man. Lots of things are happening all over. But ultimately, man, I hope you're doing well, Ray. I hope you're doing good. I'm glad we can finally get you on the show.
No, this has been a blessing. And I know we're going to be wrapping this up soon. I do want to shout out my brother. I was sharing with you earlier, Planetary from the hip hop group Out of Space, which is part of the larger Army of the Pharaohs hip hop clique. For those into the underground hip hop scene, they get a lot of love in San Antonio. My brother's performed there and has a lot of love there many, many times. He has kind of made a comeback in his career from a little bit of a hiatus. One of his songs he did with Sadat X from Brand Nubians came out prominently in the Netflix Kobe Bryant documentary. So if you're watching it and you hear Carmelo Anthony get interviewed and you hear some people spitting, that's my brother. And he's going to be on the road again. He's making new music. Check out Outer Space Music on all social media for his new music. And he's making music so beautiful, brother. He's making music with his 3 sons, college-age sons.
There you go.
So we got 2 generations of hip-hop family. You talk about fatherhood, brotherhood, working together. So making music and making a great impact in the world. And would love for him to be on your show one day and talk about his journey as a father, hip hop father. It's a great with that Latino spin. So it's he's got a great story to share as well.
Yeah, make sure I want to see if you could get us a link, drop it in the comments section for all of our viewers.
Yes,
maybe where we could find him at on social media as well, because we definitely want to check that out. I heard a couple of links that you dropped of your, I guess it would be your nephews.
Yeah, they spit,
and they were looking pretty good, man. They were looking pretty hot.
Spit, man. Yeah, they're good looking guys. It helps, God bless.
It runs in the family over there.
Yeah, well, that's talk about a guy that's got stories, but he's traveled all over the world and performed with pretty much everybody at some point. And so again, that Philly tradition really has been a big blessing in our life, and the music's a big part of that.
Awesome, my brother. Well, we're getting ready to wrap up. Big shout out to Guyland over here, who's performed some of his magic.
My man.
We're going to make sure that he gets his flowers tonight, but we'll let you have the closing word, sir. So feel free. I know you had some photos. We had a photo, no lie, folks. We're going to make sure you see this photo of Ray with MC Hammer from a few years ago. We were talking about 90s hip hop. I don't know if we could get it pulled up, man.
I got you. But yeah,
we'll
do that in the next episode.
Man.
Look, I'm just grateful to be on here, brother. Maximo, you'll probably hard for me to articulate what you meant for, not only just me as a friend and a colleague and our clubhouse era that we had with Miss Betty D and other friends, Sinbad and Dallas and all those folks, but just through my, recovery process and just, you've been a real good friend, a good brother. And just really admire, what you're about, man, and positivity. I think the fact that, and we didn't get a chance to talk about it, but your activism around Native, not just as a Latino, but, Native peoples, and highlighting and celebrating our indigenous heritage, I think has shown a lot of leadership, a lot of progressivity on your end.
So there it is.
Come on,
he pulls it up as we're giving this.
So Mac, just nothing but respect and love for you. This really quickly, MC Hammer. It's another story for another time, but went to my mother's retirement party.
Ooh.
How that happened, I don't know. So that's why you see the Capia.
MC Hammer, Ray, give us some shout out.
Wearing that kind of stuff at an event like that. But Hammer was very gracious and very, 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 very cool. And took pictures with all of us and was really, really cool. So much respect to my mom, so Yaso and MC Hammer. And so we'll talk about him and other hip hop legends we've met along the way on the next one.
And we're gonna have you back, my brother. So one of these days we're gonna have a big show where we're gonna have like 20 of the most influential people in our network on the screen at one time. It's gonna be one of those big giant Zoom calls, and your face is gonna be on there too. So be ready for the invite. And big shout out to all the Taino brothers and sisters out there, all the Cuautecans down here, all the Chippewas up in Michigan, all the Aboriginal people, the first people of the world. And so Ray's got the closing words, and MC Hammer has been pulled up. # you can't touch this. Big shout out. Check him out on his TikTok. Check him out on his Instagram. And there it is.
Well, thank you, brother. Much love to you, brother, and the network down there. Guyland doing a wonderful job. And I hope to get to San Antonio sometime this year so we can all kick it in person.
Hey, there it is. Much love to you, Ray. We'll see y'all folks next week. Check him out on social media. Guyland, take it home. We love y'all. You got that.